Hey everyone, I just wanted to check in with you now that we have finished Module 1 in our Mexican Revolution course. I was really excited to get things started with you all. I think we have a fantastic group this summer, and I'm excited to continue to get to know all of you through your insights into the history of the Mexican Revolution as we study it. Just a couple of maybe reminders or comments. You've probably noticed that with Mastodon, I just give you a score in Canvas and I try to interact with you to the extent that I can, just join the conversation on Mastodon itself. So I usually don't have a lot of scoring comments on Canvas for those assignments. Unless there's something that needs to be addressed. But right now we're off to a great start, so none of that. As we move to Module 2, we will be studying the Porfiriato, which is the dictatorship of Porfirio Diaz, which was the period in Mexican history that came right before the revolution. There were a lot of things that occurred due to the leadership of Diaz that created the conditions for the revolution, created the spark that ignited it. And so that's why it's really important to study that time frame and that period. As you'll know if you watched the video about the readings for our course, this is where we start the kind of most typical pattern that we'll have from module to module, where we read a couple of chapters from the Castro book, from Gonzalez, and from Wasserman. So remember that Gonzalez, the Mexican Revolution, that is an overview of the history of the revolution, the big picture context, the main narrative, the textbook, if we want to think of it that way. Castro is a monograph, so his work focuses on the specific issue of the development of radio technology and how it impacted not just the revolution, but the years leading into it. And something that's interesting that comes out of his work, I think, is that he's able to use radio as a point of continuity between the 19th century, the Porfiriato, and the revolutionary period. And no matter what historiographical kind of camp scholars fall into, we talked a little bit about that on Mastodon, the different interpretations of the revolution that came about. Early on, it was celebrated as a popular social movement. By the 60s and 70s, it was kind of recast in a more negative light as, just more of the authoritarian tendencies, but it was a major rupture with the Porfirian age because it brought a whole new group of essentially authoritarian leaders into power. And then by the 80s and 90s, there was a sort of pendulum swing back, but it wasn't, the scholarship at that point wasn't as celebratory as a lot of it had been early on. It was still critical, but instead looking at regions and locales and how kind of everyday Mexican people were impacted by the revolution, and found that despite all of its problems, and there are many, that the revolution was something that was a net positive in terms of rights, in terms of the rule of law for the Mexican people. Then more recently, with new developments in the drug trade, in border relations with the U.S., things like this, scholars are beginning to think about it again. So that was just a really quick and without much detail synopsis of historiographical trends of the revolution. And so as we're studying those, we see that most scholars, see the revolution as a major break with the past, a major moment of change. But there were a lot of things, even the bureaucracy of the government, that didn't really go away. And that's something that Castro's work on radio development and the way that it was kind of managed and nationalized and then semi-privatized in certain ways, all of that kind of represents a point of continuity pre-revolution and to the revolution and beyond. So that's something interesting to think about, especially as another trend in recent years, in the 2000 teens, especially in Mexico, has been to kind of rehabilitate the image of Porfirio Diaz. So he's not seen by everyone. He's still seen by many people in the ways that we will be introduced to him in the histories that we're reading. But there is a group, they tend to be more on the right wing of Mexican politics, that view Porfirio Diaz as a figure to be emulated, as someone who might even be heroic. And so, again, we need to think about why those things have happened and how what's happening in current events influences the way that history is portrayed and the different interpretations that certain groups of people really want to hold on to. And that leaves us the question, what should we make of history? How can we use it to get a fuller picture of everyone who has been involved, to try to understand as many perspectives as possible? Of course, that makes a very messy story. It doesn't make good storylines sometimes, but I think that is the most important for truly understanding how the past has influenced the present and vice versa. All of that then to say, just as looking forward in terms of assignments, Module 2 will do reading comments on Mastodon and a discussion. A few of you have already started both of those. Remember to review the discussion guidelines sheet, because there you'll get all of the explanation of how to do the discussion and what the expectations are. Essentially, you'll be posting an open-ended question for everyone else to respond to. And you need to provide some context for that question so that we kind of know, I was reading this and it brought these kinds of issues to mind, and so here's the question that I'd like us to think about. That type of format for the question. And then you'll need to respond to at least 2 of your classmates' questions, and be sure to include specific cited information from the readings in those responses as you do so. Next week, we will move on to the blog post element of our class. We haven't seen that yet, so if you haven't yet joined Medium, please do that. Add your username to the spreadsheet so that I can get you as a writer on our class blog at Medium. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. Many of you have already done it, so I appreciate that. I tend to be long-winded because I start talking about the historical content and I weave in those comments about what to remember in terms of the coursework and where we're going. So I apologize a little bit for that, but I'm enjoying getting to know you again, and I hope that you all enjoy our class this semester.